My friends, we are living in a world that is consumed by three things: sex, power, and materialism. Everywhere you look, people are chasing after pleasure, position, and possessions, believing that these things will bring them happiness, fulfillment, and meaning. But let me tell you the truth. These are the great deceptions of the devil. The Bible says in 1 John 2:16, "For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world." And yet, so many have fallen into the trap of believing that these things will satisfy the emptiness in their hearts. Sex without God's design leads to brokenness. Power without righteousness leads to corruption. Material wealth without Christ leads to spiritual poverty. And today I have come to tell you there is a better way. God never intended for us to be slaves to our desires. He offers something greater, something eternal. And tonight, I want to tell you about the only thing that can truly satisfy the longing of your soul. The world constantly bombards us with messages that pleasure is the key to happiness. From television screens to social media, from movies to advertisements, we are told that if we can just satisfy our desires, we will finally be content. Sex has become one of the greatest tools of deception, promising fulfillment but leaving many broken and empty. Society has taken what God created for good and turned it into something that leads to destruction. What was meant to be sacred has been cheapened. What was meant to unite has been used to divide. From the beginning of time, the enemy has used pleasure as a way to turn people away from God. In the Garden of Eden, Eve was tempted by what was pleasing to the eye and desirable for gaining wisdom. The same deception continues today. The world whispers that boundaries are outdated, that self-restraint is unnecessary, and that the only thing that matters is how we feel in the moment. But feelings are fleeting. Desires change. What satisfies for a moment often leads to regret for a lifetime. Sex, in its rightful place, is a gift from God. It was designed to be an expression of love within the covenant of marriage, a bond between a husband and wife that reflects the unity and intimacy God desires with His people. But when taken outside of God's plan, it becomes a source of pain rather than joy. It becomes a counterfeit version of love, one that takes rather than gives, one that leaves wounds rather than heals. The enemy has convinced the world that freedom is found in indulging every desire. But the truth is, the more we give in to sin, the more enslaved we become. Look around at the world today. Divorce rates are rising, families are breaking apart, and people are left searching for something deeper, something real. The pursuit of pleasure has led to an epidemic of heartbreak. Young people are being taught that casual relationships have no consequences, yet they find themselves feeling used, unloved, and alone. Many chase after the next thrill, the next experience, believing that if they can just have more, they will finally be satisfied. But the hunger never ends. The more they consume, the emptier they feel. Sin never satisfies. It always demands more. What begins as a small compromise turns into a stronghold. What starts as a harmless indulgence soon takes control. And once sin takes hold, it doesn't let go easily. Lust is never satisfied. It promises fulfillment but only brings addiction, guilt, and shame. The Bible warns us in Proverbs 14:12, "There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death." What the world calls freedom, God calls bondage. What the world calls love, God calls deception. The enemy knows that if he can control our desires, he can control our lives. He knows that if he can keep us chasing after pleasure, we will never stop long enough to see the destruction it is causing. He doesn't want us to think about the consequences. He doesn't want us to see the broken homes, the shattered lives, the people drowning in regret. He wants us to keep believing the lie that we are in control, that we can handle it, that it's just a little compromise. But compromise always leads to destruction. God's Word tells us to flee from sexual immorality, not to flirt with it, not to see how close we can get without getting burned, but to run from it. 1 Corinthians 6:18 says, "Flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body." There is something uniquely damaging about sinning in this way. It doesn't just affect the body, it affects the soul. It leaves scars that last long after the moment has passed. But there is hope. No matter how deep the deception, no matter how far someone has gone, God's grace is greater. He doesn't condemn, He calls. He doesn't reject, he redeems. The enemy wants to trap people in shame, to make them believe that they are too far gone. But Jesus came to set the captives free. He came to heal the brokenhearted and restore what has been lost. He offers true satisfaction, a kind of love that isn't based on momentary pleasure, but on eternal security. The world offers a cheap imitation of love, one that is based on taking rather than giving. But God's love is sacrificial. It is pure, it is holy, and it is the only thing that can truly satisfy the longing in the human heart. Power is one of the greatest temptations known to man. From the beginning of time, people have sought power over others, over their circumstances, over their own destinies. The desire for control runs deep in the human heart. It starts with the smallest of ambitions, a longing to be recognized, to be respected, to be in charge. But left unchecked, this desire grows. It becomes an obsession. It becomes a consuming fire that blinds people to everything else. Power, when pursued without righteousness, is dangerous. It corrupts, it destroys, and worst of all, it deceives. The devil himself was once an angel of light, created by God for a purpose. But pride entered his heart. He wanted more. He wanted to rise above his Creator. He wanted the throne of heaven. That hunger for power led to his downfall. He was cast down from heaven, and since that moment he has worked to deceive humanity with the same lie that destroyed him. That power is the ultimate goal, that it is worth any cost, that it is the measure of greatness. The world tells us that the more power we have, the more valuable we are. It tells us that success is measured by how many people serve us, how many obey us, how many admire us. It teaches that leadership is about dominance, that influence is about manipulation, that winning is the only thing that matters. People chase titles, positions, authority, believing that if they can just climb high enough, they will be fulfilled. But history tells another story. The most powerful rulers, the wealthiest kings, the most feared warriors, so many of them ended their lives in misery. They achieved everything the world had to offer, yet they were left empty. Power by itself never satisfies. It always demands more. When power is sought for selfish reasons, it leads to destruction. Look at the world today. Corruption is everywhere. Leaders lie, cheat, and steal to maintain their positions. Nations rise against nations in a struggle for dominance. Even in everyday life, people step on others to get ahead. In business, in politics, in entertainment, even in families, the thirst for control poisons relationships. Husbands demand submission without love. Employers abuse authority without justice. Governments oppress instead of serve. And in all of it, people convince themselves they are justified, that they are simply doing what is necessary to survive in a competitive world. But Jesus showed us a different kind of power. He had all authority in heaven and on earth. He could have ruled with an iron fist. He could have demanded that the world bow before him. Yet, he humbled himself. He washed the feet of his disciples. He touched the untouchable. He served the lowest of the low. He said in Matthew 20:26, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant." True power is not about control. It is about servanthood. It is about righteousness. It is about using influence to uplift others rather than crush them. The problem with seeking power without God is that it leads to pride, and pride leads to destruction. Proverbs 16:18 warns, "Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. The higher people lift themselves up, the harder they fall." History has seen it time and time again. Leaders who believed they were untouchable met sudden ruin. Nations built on arrogance crumbled overnight. Even the strongest men were brought to their knees. No one is beyond the reach of God's judgment. No one is exempt from the consequences of pride. Power makes people believe they are in control of their own destinies. It makes them forget their need for God. The more influence they have, the more self-sufficient they feel. They begin to trust in their own abilities rather than in the Lord. They surround themselves with people who feed their egos, who tell them what they want to hear. Their hearts grow hard. Their ears grow deaf to wisdom. They no longer recognize their own weaknesses, their own vulnerability. They believe they are invincible until the moment they fall. The truth is, power belongs to God alone. Any authority that a person has is given by Him, and it can be taken away in an instant. The greatest kings of the Bible learned this the hard way. Nebuchadnezzar, the mighty ruler of Babylon, stood on his palace rooftop and boasted, Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty? Daniel 4:30. And in that very moment, God humbled him. He was driven from his throne, made to live like an animal, stripped of everything until he acknowledged that God alone is sovereign. Power is not evil in itself, but when it is separated from humility, when it is pursued apart from God's will, it becomes dangerous. It leads to oppression. It blinds people to the truth. It creates idols out of men. But no matter how high a person climbs, they will one day stand before the throne of God. And on that day, earthly power will mean nothing. Only righteousness will matter. Only the condition of the heart will be judged. Only those who have bowed before Christ in this life will stand before him in eternity. Materialism has become one of the greatest deceptions of our time. The world teaches that success is measured by wealth, that happiness comes from possessions, and that security is found in financial abundance. Everywhere you look, people are chasing after more money, more luxury, more status. They believe that if they can just acquire enough, they will finally be satisfied. But the truth is, materialism is a trap. It promises fulfillment, but it never delivers. It gives the illusion of security, but it can be taken away in an instant. It is a never-ending pursuit that leaves the soul empty. People spend their lives working tirelessly, sacrificing their health, their families, and even their integrity for the sake of material gain. They wake up early and go to bed late, consumed by the thought of making more money, climbing higher, achieving greater success. They convince themselves that once they reach a certain level, they will finally be at peace. But the problem is, the finish line keeps moving. No matter how much they acquire, it is never enough. The more they have, the more they want. The moment they get what they once dreamed of, they set their eyes on something greater. They tell themselves that happiness is just one more step away, but that step never ends. Jesus warned about the dangers of materialism. In Luke 12:15, he said, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." Yet the world tells a different story. It tells people that their value is determined by what they own, that their worth is found in the car they drive, the house they live in, the clothes they wear. People become slaves to appearances, spending money they don't have to impress people who don't care. They chase after material things, believing they will bring joy, but instead they find themselves burdened with debt, stress, and anxiety. The saddest part is that materialism blinds people to what truly matters. It makes them focus on temporary things instead of eternal things. It keeps them distracted, always reaching for more, never stopping to consider what really has value. People invest in stocks, businesses, and real estate, but they fail to invest in their souls. They build earthly empires while neglecting their relationship with God. They store up treasures on earth, ignoring the words of Jesus in Matthew 6:19-20. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. Material wealth can disappear in an instant. A market crash, an accident, an unexpected illness, everything that seems so secure can be gone overnight. And then what? What happens to the person who placed their trust in money when the money is no longer there? What happens to the one who built their identity around success when failure comes? The world does not offer lasting security. The riches of this world are fragile, temporary, fleeting. But those who trust in God have a foundation that cannot be shaken. Many people believe that having more will bring them peace, but true peace does not come from possessions. It comes from knowing Christ. The richest man in the world can still feel empty, while the poorest man who knows Jesus can be filled with joy. The Apostle Paul understood this when he wrote in Philippians 4:12, "I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation." Contentment is not found in wealth, it is found in God. Materialism also creates an illusion of independence. People believe that as long as they have enough money, they don't need God. They trust in their bank accounts more than they trust in the Lord. They believe they can buy their way out of every problem, fix every situation with their resources. But there will come a day when money cannot save them. There will come a moment when no amount of wealth will make a difference. In the end, every person will stand before God, and on that day, it will not matter how much they owned. The only thing that will matter is whether they knew Jesus Christ. The world celebrates those who accumulate wealth. But God measures success differently. True wealth is not found in material possessions, but in a heart that is rich toward God. True success is not about how much a person has, but about how much they have surrendered to Christ. Those who chase after money will never find lasting joy, but those who seek first the kingdom of God will receive something far greater: peace, purpose, and an eternal reward that can never be taken away. From the very beginning, God has warned his people about the dangers of chasing after the things of this world. The Bible makes it clear that the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life are not from the Father, but are of the world. Yet, generation after generation, people continue to fall into the same traps. The enemy has no new tricks. He uses the same temptations that have led countless souls away from God. The desires of the flesh, the hunger for more, and the pride of self-sufficiency have always been the downfall of those who refuse to listen to God's warnings. When Eve was in the Garden of Eden, the serpent deceived her by appealing to her desires. The fruit looked good, it seemed desirable, and it promised wisdom. She believed the lie that she was missing out on something better. She disobeyed God, and in that moment, sin entered the world. That same deception still plays out today. People see things that look good, that seem desirable, that promise success and happiness, and they ignore God's warnings. They listen to the whispers that tell them they are missing out, that God is holding them back, that they can have more, be more, do more, if only they take matters into their own hands. But what seems like a small compromise can lead to a lifetime of regret. The Bible tells us in 1 John 2:16, "For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world." These three things, desires of the flesh, desires of the eyes, and pride, sum up the very essence of sin. The lust of the flesh is the craving for pleasure, the desire to satisfy the body's urges without considering the cost. The lust of the eyes is the hunger for more, the constant pursuit of wealth, status, and material things. And the pride of life is the self-glorification, the belief that we are in control, that we are the masters of our own destiny. The lust of the flesh has destroyed countless lives. People chase after temporary pleasures, believing they will bring fulfillment. They indulge in sin, thinking there will be no consequences. But sin always comes with a price. The world celebrates indulgence, telling people to follow their hearts, to do what feels right, to seek their own happiness above all else. But what feels good in the moment can lead to destruction. The enemy doesn't show the consequences. He only shows the temporary pleasure. He doesn't reveal the broken marriages, the ruined reputations, the families torn apart by sin. He doesn't tell people that what they are chasing will never satisfy them. He simply keeps them distracted, feeding their desires, so they never stop to see the emptiness inside. The lust of the eyes is just as dangerous. It is the insatiable desire for more money, more possessions, more recognition. People become consumed with what they see. They compare themselves to others, always feeling like they don't have enough. Social media has only made this worse. People look at the lives of others and believe they are missing out. They see the success, the luxury, the beauty, and they grow discontent with their own lives. They chase after material things, believing that wealth and status will bring happiness. But the Bible warns in Ecclesiastes 5:10, "Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income." This, too, is meaningless. The pursuit of riches is a never-ending cycle. No matter how much a person accumulates, it is never enough. And in the end, all the possessions in the world will mean nothing. The pride of life is perhaps the most dangerous of all. It is the sin that caused Satan's downfall. It is the belief that we don't need God, that we are self-sufficient, that we are in control. Pride blinds people to the truth. It makes them trust in their own strength rather than in God. It makes them believe they are better than others, that they are more deserving, more important. But the Bible warns in Proverbs 16:18, "Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall." No matter how successful a person is, no matter how powerful they become, pride will always lead to ruin. There will always come a moment when they realize they are not as strong as they thought. God's warnings are not meant to take away joy, but to protect His people. He knows where these desires lead. He knows that chasing after pleasure, wealth, and self-glory only leads to emptiness. He calls His people to something greater. He calls them to trust in Him, to seek Him first, to find their fulfillment in Him alone. But the world will continue to call, offering empty promises, whispering lies, trying to convince people that God is holding them back. And the choice remains the same as it was in the garden, to listen to God's truth or to fall for the enemy's deception. The world has always tried to redefine success. It tells people that their value is determined by what they achieve, how much they own, and how much power they hold. It convinces them that their identity is tied to their status, that their worth is based on the approval of others. From an early age, people are taught to chase after the things the world celebrates: money, influence, recognition. They are told that if they work hard enough, if they climb high enough, if they gain enough, they will finally be happy. But no matter how much they accomplish, it is never enough. There is always another level to reach, another goal to accomplish, another mountain to climb. The world's version of success is an endless pursuit that leaves people exhausted, anxious, and unfulfilled. The reason people keep chasing after these things is because they believe they will bring security. They believe that if they accumulate enough wealth, they will be safe from hardship. They believe that if they gain enough power, they will be in control of their lives. They believe that if they earn enough recognition, they will finally be at peace with themselves. But none of these things can provide true security. Wealth can disappear overnight. Power can be taken away in an instant. The approval of others is fleeting. Those who place their trust in the things of this world are building their lives on a foundation of sand. When the storms of life come, everything they relied on will collapse, and they will be left with nothing. Jesus warned against this deception. In Matthew 16:26, he asked, "What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul?" The world celebrates those who rise to the top, those who accumulate wealth, those who gain influence. But in the end, none of it will matter. The richest man in the world will stand before God just as empty-handed as the poorest man. The most powerful ruler will bow before the same king. The most admired celebrity will face the same judgment as the most forgotten person. And on that day, the only thing that will matter is whether or not they knew Jesus Christ. Yet, people continue to trade their souls for temporary gain. They sacrifice their integrity for success. They compromise their values for wealth. They push aside their faith to fit in with the world. They believe that they are making wise decisions, that they are securing their future, that they are building something lasting, but everything they are striving for is temporary. Everything they are clinging to will pass away. No amount of money can buy salvation. No level of power can change eternity. No human recognition can compare to hearing the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." The enemy has convinced people that following God will cost them too much. He tells them that they will miss out on life, that they will lose opportunities, that they will be left behind. He tempts them with the illusion that they can have both, the world and God. He tells them that they can serve two masters, that they can chase after success while still keeping a little bit of faith on the side. But Jesus made it clear in Matthew 6:24, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. People must choose. They cannot live for God while chasing after the things of the world. They cannot seek the kingdom of heaven while their hearts are consumed with earthly desires. True success is not measured by wealth, power, or status. True success is found in obedience to God. It is found in surrender. It is found in seeking first the kingdom of God. It is found in storing up treasures in heaven rather than on earth. The world will never understand this kind of success. It will look at those who follow Christ and call them foolish. It will mock those who sacrifice worldly gain for eternal reward. It will ridicule those who choose righteousness over riches. But in the end, the wisdom of the world will be exposed as foolishness. The success of the world will be revealed as empty. The wealth of the world will be shown to be worthless. And those who trusted in the Lord will receive an inheritance that can never be taken away. People must decide what they are living for. Are they living for the temporary or for the eternal? Are they investing in things that will pass away or in things that will last forever? Are they chasing after what the world values or what God values? The world will continue to offer its version of success, but it is a lie. It is a deception. It is a dead-end road. The only true security, the only true fulfillment, the only true success is found in Christ alone. There is a battle happening every single day, a battle for the heart, the mind, and the soul. This battle is not fought with weapons of war, but with deception, temptation, and distraction. The enemy does not come with an obvious attack. He comes with subtle lies, whispered suggestions, small compromises that seem harmless at first. He does not tell people to abandon God outright. Instead, he convinces them to shift their focus, to place their trust in things that will never satisfy, to live for the temporary rather than the eternal. He knows that if he can keep people consumed with the things of this world, sex, power, materialism, he can keep them from experiencing the abundant life God has for them. The enemy has been using the same tactics since the beginning of time. He knows that the desires of the flesh are powerful. He knows that people are drawn to what they can see, feel, and experience in the moment. He knows that if he can make sin look appealing, if he can make it seem rewarding, if he can make it feel necessary for success or happiness, many will fall into his trap. The Bible warns in Corinthians 11:14 that Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. He does not come with a warning sign. He comes disguised as opportunity, as success, as pleasure, as fulfillment. But everything he offers is counterfeit. It is temporary. It is a mirage that disappears when it is needed most. The problem is that many people do not realize they are in a battle. They believe that they are simply living their lives, making their own choices, determining their own path. They do not see the forces at work behind the scenes, pulling them away from the truth, leading them down a road that ends in destruction. The Bible makes it clear in Ephesians 6:12, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." This is not just about individual choices. It is about spiritual warfare. The enemy is strategic. He knows exactly how to lure people away from God, and he uses whatever tools are most effective: pleasure, ambition, greed, pride, insecurity, fear. One of the most dangerous things about this battle is that it happens gradually. The enemy does not usually destroy people all at once. He leads them step by step. He convinces them to compromise in small ways, to justify things that once seemed wrong, to make little decisions that, over time, change their entire direction. He makes them believe that they are in control, that they can stop any time they want, that they can walk away when it gets dangerous. But before they know it, they are trapped. They have built a life that is centered around the very things that are destroying them. They have become dependent on what was only meant to deceive them. The only way to win this battle is to recognize the enemy's tactics and resist them. James 4:7 says, "Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you." It starts with submission to God, with acknowledging that his way is better, that his truth is the only truth. It requires a willingness to let go of the things the world celebrates, to walk a different path, to choose what is eternal over what is temporary. This is not always easy. The world will pressure people to conform, to chase after the same things everyone else is chasing. The enemy will try to make them believe they are missing out, that they are giving up too much. But what they are truly giving up is destruction, regret, and emptiness. What they are gaining is life, peace, and eternal security.